Alright, we're going to do some fine-tune adjustments to this. There's a few issues I can see kind of right off the bat. Right now I have superimposed the natural teeth without the prep, and it's fine to see a little bit burn through. It's not very heavy. However, there's quite a bit more on this lateral, and it's kind of interesting to see that where my contacts were, most of this contact is being made from girth from number 9 rather than number 10. Obviously there's some burn through here, so this tooth would have to be more aggressively prepped, and hopefully we don't lose symmetry between 8 and 9 as we try to make adjustments to bring or shorten this number 9 and keep symmetry from 7 to 10 as well. One thing you'll probably notice too is that there's obviously a lot of wear on the canine here, and so you would expect the tooth to come up into that area, which you do. And you'll notice if you look at the opposing and you look through the bottom, you can tell where a lot of my tooth is burning through. On the other side, that's also the case. So that means that we're going to have to modify this tooth, whether by bringing everything just out a little bit more, or just change the shape of the individual teeth, which, considering that there's some burn through in these areas, I'm thinking that I'm probably want to bring these teeth out a little bit, which unfortunately will affect the way that the my margins have already been set, but usually it's not too bad. So I'm not going to bring all the teeth out in one single unit. You can do that, I guess, but you can bring them all kind of out in the same plane. The reason I don't like that too much is it's bringing out the laterals on kind of a different plane, because I want these laterals to come out in this plane, not on this plane. So I typically don't do that. So it means I'm just going to have to come to the individual teeth and do that. So let's go ahead and start there. So I'm just trying to, I almost kind of count the pixels that I moved it, which I know sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I feel like I moved it about 5 pixels there. That's 5 pixels there. Already looks pretty good there. So let's do that here as well. And you're going to notice too, one thing that's actually really annoying, and there's not much I can do about it, is that the angle is not just out, it's up and out. So I might have to compensate for that by dropping it a little bit, unfortunately. So I kind of brought it out 5 pixels and dropped it 2 pixels. And I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. Alright, that's pretty good. You can tell that I exposed the margins. Not much of it. I'll have to come back and adjust that. And these should be overlapping a little too much, yeah. So the space between there and there, I'm going to have to dial that back a little bit. Now I'm going to look and see the opposing, which obviously it burns through quite a bit even after that work was done. Maybe I can fudge this a little bit, and even though I understand that I'm kind of breaking from my desire to keep these teeth symmetric, I'm going to try to rotate this to bring that much more out. But just don't want to do it too much to where it starts compromising the cosmetics of the tooth. This tooth can afford to do the same thing, because it actually has some burn through in the same area. Now I can manually go in and adjust the shapes of these teeth to accommodate for this, but I just, especially looking at this, I just know that if I delete out all that tooth structure, I mean, I can see part of the incisal ledge in there. So even though it looks okay from the front, the incisal ledge is just going to be razor thin right here, and it's not going to look right. So I want to try to compensate for that by moving it bodily in some form. I'm just kind of regathering my sights here to see if things still kind of look symmetric. I don't know, I might have to continue bringing it all out. I hate to say that, but it should be okay. I mean, I'm not really, compared to where the natural teeth are, I'm probably less than a millimeter out from that. And I think his smile can accommodate that. So I'll probably just continue to expand these. And I'm just realizing that these centrals also kind of went up and out, so I might have to, I didn't make the vertical adjustments for that. Which, I mean, they still look fine. They're still covering up the old incisal edge location from the natural dentition. Alright, I feel like I've kind of fudged the positioning as much as I can before compromising symmetry and other cosmetic features. So let's make some corrections around the margins just to make sure that that comes together how it should. Sometimes the smooth tool is really helpful to help actually bring this stuff out for you. Especially in areas where I may have really dug into the occlusion earlier using the local geometry transform tool. So I'm going to do something interesting here. I don't have like a ton of excess tooth structure above the ear, and I don't feel like it's going to be enough for me to grab. So like I can just come here and actually just kind of extend this. It doesn't really affect the rest of the tooth, but just kind of gives me a little bit more to grip up here, because I tend to grip out, or, inside of the model rather than directly on the tooth. Sometimes I make a trial run. I just kind of want to see what happens when I get extreme, and then I'll, when I'm done, I'll hit Control Z. Control Z is your friend. It'll reverse anything that you've done accidentally or just to try to test things out. Don't forget to save. Okay, alright, let's try to close out some of these black triangles. There's going to be so much I can do in some areas. It's just the papillae are just not, they're just not there. So the hardest part is trying to expand, you know, what would be the porcelain of these areas without increase or taking it off the margin or making the contacts too heavy or broad to where your path of insertion isn't going to seat fully. Let's see what I can do here though. Gosh, I doubt there's this much I can do here. I'm trying to stay where I am because I'm trying to not take off the margins. That's probably as good as I can do. You can look through the model and just kind of see where that contact is. Sometimes I'll come smooth that a little bit. Now this is the one that's pretty evenly split. I mean, even if I take the teeth out and I look at this, you know, that's going to be a very hard black triangle to fill in. Again, this tooth is taking the brunt of the responsibility of filling this gap, and I don't like that. I'm going to see if I can't bring this in. Yeah, and actually now this tooth is, number 9 looks a little better to me. It doesn't have that weird, odd curvature in this area. Which I might be able to help a little bit more by just kind of smoothing this edge. I always have the power low. I'm trying to mimic that on the other side if I can. And then the individual teeth themselves, you know, like I said in the previous video, I don't really like how, I don't like those curvatures as much, so I'm going to see if I can't, I'm using the smooth tool, but I'm really just taking these areas that stick out just a little bit more and just kind of trying to pass across it and try to do the same thing on the other side. And you'll notice I'm clicking actually right now. It's not doing anything. It's not until you move it that it starts doing things. So that's why you see me doing this waving motion. That last one was just a little more heavy than I wanted. I feel like even the incisal ledges of these centrals could use just a little bit of flattening. And it's amazing how much those subtle changes can make a difference. And when I'm looking at this tooth feels like it's, instead of like being more of a left to right, down to up, it's more of left to right, up to down. So I might have to help it transition up here just a little better. And I just gotta double check that any adjustments I made isn't compromising the contacts. So I can usually make those translucent, and then yeah, so you can kind of see barely this. Here's my contact. That's nothing. I need that obviously heavier. I'll probably do a combination of both teeth like I was earlier. Yeah, I don't think there's much hope for filling this black triangle in. It's going to be tough. I'm sure I'm bringing it off the margins a little bit, but luckily when I translate all this into Serac, I mean, they're going to force the margins. So I'm not going to have to worry too much about that, except for when it comes to the temp, because I am using this to try to build a temp, and I want those to be as accurate to the margins as I can make them. So I'm also going to just check and see how much enamel I have to remove beyond just the regular prep, and that feels like a lot to me. You know, you can see in here, I might just artificially thicken the incisal edge and bring it out just to make it so I don't have to prep as much enamel back from this edge. But then again, you know, my predicted position is obviously well covered, so I certainly don't have to. It just gives me a little bit of peace of mind knowing that I'm not prepping as aggressively. It's not like it's hard to do. Just takes a matter of seconds compared to a conventional wax up. And that looks pretty good. So finally, I'm going to check the contacts. It's a little bit tougher. Basically, you know, getting an idea of how much burn through there is in the natural dentition back here. You know, obviously that's way too heavy. There's two ways to do this. I'm going to actually do probably a blend of both of them. Usually I just kind of leave this on, and I come in, select the tooth, and I use the smooth tool. Try to shrink it. You can actually kind of tell by my outline where the tooth is. And I'm smoothing. It's actually making it bigger, so I'm gonna have to come in here with this tool instead and just kind of dial that back. I mean, I'm okay if there's a little bit of contact. I'll make that transparent for just a second. Smooth that out. I'm noticing that my margin's exposed here a little bit. That's fine. This probably should be smooth. When I work on this in the mouth, I may come back and do some adjustments to the opposing too. Usually before I do my prep appointment, I come back and look at my wax up, so I know, you know, where I have areas that I might have to do extra reduction. So luckily it doesn't look like it compromised the appearance of the tooth, really. But, you know, when you look at it, obviously you see this kind of big divot, you know, where that canine needs to come and make some contact. Yeah, I'm definitely going to make these out of Emax. Probably Emax HTs. I love Empress multi, but I don't think that's a good idea in this situation due to these contacts. So the other method I was going to show you was through something called a Boolean difference. So I actually don't think I really need that right now. However, I want to show it to you. So on the editing panel, there's this arrow. It's called Boolean operations. And you're going to want to do a Boolean difference. And I'm going to have to do this for each individual tooth, but I want to make a difference between the tooth and my lower impression. And basically all it's going to really do is delete out any contact areas directly and then make you a new STL model of those teeth. I need to select the tooth here, difference against here. There. Now I have this extra tooth, and you can see where it is. So this little cutout, there's two of them, here and here. So it gave me a new tooth that's exactly a replica minus the contact area. So you can see it kind of flicker. And that's because it's hitting right up against it perfectly. Now, as somebody that uses Sirac a lot, I mean, that doesn't mean all that much to me. The difference between what I had before with this tooth and that tooth. Because you can tell that there's some burn through here. And, you know, I'd rather have a contact I can see in the mouth and make adjustments intraorally than to not have a contact at all. So that's why I'm not going to do it in this particular circumstance, because I do have just little minor spots already. But that's how you would do it. Then you would have to go through each individual tooth, select each tooth in here, and then choose your opposing model in here to make that difference. And you can choose the offset that you want, and I just made mine 0, which obviously I could have made just like, well, 1 millimeter is way too much, but anyway, but that's a really useful feature sometimes. So pretty much ready at this point. I am going to just keep my original tooth and ignore that one. So I want to print this up, and you know, I'm going to end up using this print up of this tooth or this model to put into a biocopy in the Sirac program, and I'll be able to copy it that way. It'd be nice if I could just send this straight over to the Sirac and as an STL, but it doesn't allow me to do that right now, so I'm just gonna have to print a physical model and scan it in manually, which drives me nuts, but that's just the way it is. The best part about all this is you're going to be able to export this at no cost. So I usually want it very high, STL. Let's export this. And we're going to save that. And we're actually going to do just one last thing to make this print ready. I like using Meshmixer a lot, so let's bring this into Meshmixer for a second. And the first thing I'm going to do, so yeah, so you should be able to see this. Looks pretty good. You can see all that tooth structure in the side of there. It's not going to matter really. I want to make sure there aren't any errors inside. Actually, it is giving me an error right here. There's extra data I don't need. We're just going to fill that in. And it can sometimes make mistakes with the process of doing this. So anyway, I'm going to hit Control A. I'm selecting everything. Coming up to Edit and hitting Extrude. And I'm going to switch this over to Y-axis. And I want this to be flat. And then I'm just going to go nuts. And I'm going to bring this way up. I want to make sure I'm covering all of these areas. And then hit Accept. It looks like this because the model is like kind of inside out from the perspective of the computer, and obviously we don't want that. So I'm actually going to hit Control A again and hit something called Flip Normals, and it will give me the correct side showing through. And then I'm going to hit Edit and Plane Cut, and there's a lot of excess resin here I don't really need. I just selected the area where I want the cut to be. There's an arrow here to flip it to the other side. And I just have to decide which, how much I want. Since I'm doing probably a putty impression of this for transferring to the mouth intraorally with integrity or some kind of temporary material, some soft tissue is good to have. And this looks fine to me. I also don't want to be wasteful with printing excess resin. So usually, or sometimes it will actually, I'm hitting Control Z here, it'll fill in the area where I'm cutting, and it didn't in this situation, which sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. And actually, if I modify this, sometimes it'll give me that cut, and sometimes it won't. You can see it's doing it on the teeth here, but that's too far down. I'm not quite sure why it does it like that, but anyway, but I'm just going to go ahead and accept that anyway, and then in my analysis inspector, it's going to recognize there's a big hole there. So I'm telling it to fill in that hole, so I'm going to click that, and it's going to calculate filling that in. And it could take a few minutes, depending on the kind of how powerful your graphics card is. Alright, so there it is. I have my nice flat area. So this is all filled in as one solid model. So now I'm going to check my inspector one more time, because you just never know. These weird errors pop up when you least expect them. And we're going to export this. And I will put this into my Rayware, and I'll be able to 3D print this. And I'm going to be using the Sprintray Pro 95 and in the Sprintray die model to gray. And I'm going to do this in smooth. I pretty much always do smooth unless I'm constrained by time, which is rare. And bring this in. Just drag and drop it. It says insufficient base, which I'm a little confused about. Oh, it's fine. I think it just default does that. Anyway, so now I have it on my platform, so I'm going to send this to 3D printer. I will be able to print this out, and I should have my wax up ready to show the patient, make sure they're happy with the way it looks, and use it for my temps. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. You know, I'll be trying to post more content from time to time, especially as it comes to the digital workflows. I found this method to be really helpful and predictable to communicate what things will look like to the patients, especially in terms of accepting treatment plans. And making temps that are reflective of how you want the finals to look. So so thank you for watching. Like the video if you liked it, and we will see you soon. Thanks. Bye bye.